pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item is an update on our town park project, and with that, I'll invite Mr. Morris forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for indulging us in setting this special meeting this afternoon. We have a time-sensitive application to the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, and there's been a lot of moving pieces, and so we're very appreciative of the board accommodating this request to forward with the grant. You have been given a packet of information about the 2023 Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant, and I will go through these pretty quickly. Fundamentally, we want to report to the board a couple of the changes that we have made in the application from last year. You might recall that the grant application that we submitted was just outside of the funded applications. There were 38 projects funded in the state, and I think we were number 41. We were just a few points off, and so we consulted with the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund staff to see where there were a couple of places we could pick up some points. We've made those changes to the plan. It does not substantially alter the physical elements of the park. It makes it better, and so we feel good about that. The other thing that we have is that last year we did submit a matching number of $700,000, but it was sort of undetermined where those sources would necessarily come from. We were successful in receiving a $900,000 grant from the Department of Commerce, the Rural Transformation Grant. We also have the $100,000 private contribution that we have used for planning and design, which will count toward our matching funds. And then in working with the town manager, we are asking the town to allocate $225,000 from the supplanted funds scenario, and Mr. Francis can provide more detail about that. Nevertheless, we have a much stronger application, and so we feel like we should be able to go forward successfully. The applications are due May 1st, and so we're sort of in the 11th hour, and so again, thank you for accommodating this meeting. The first thing is that we will be asking the mayor to provide his signature to the form that's called the Basic Facts and Assurances. That just sort of lays out the fundamental who and what's of the project, who the contact person is, who the city manager is, and what the scope of the project might be. There's also a description and justification of the project. Our consultants, especially John Wood at Benish, has been working with the part of staff to make sure that we hit on the salient points of the part of funding process, so that we can add the recreational components to the park that we feel will strengthen the competitiveness of our application. And Mr. Hsu, if you will display, oh, there it is. He is communicating with me telepathically and displaying the plan. Fundamentally, it's the same park. We're talking about the green area in this plan, with a total cost of estimated cost of $1,750,000. It still has the pavilion. It still has the lawn. We are adding a few things to strengthen the recreational uses of the park, including some cafe tables and chairs with some trash receptacles. Also, we've talked about having an interactive water element. This has not been specifically designed. Once we know if we're successful in the grant application, we will have construction. Well, actually, we're going to proceed with construction drawings. I should changing my thinking about that. Because we have the Department of Commerce grant, we need to get going. And we need to plan out the park. We need to get the construction drawings. We have funds that are available to us to pursue that. And so that's something that we need to get going with right away. We have strengthened the description of the walking trails around the perimeter and also the multi-purpose lawn. So there's nothing really that changes much about this plan except the addition of the picnicking elements and the water feature, and also public art. We have a description of public art on that. All of this is to be determined through a design public input process. So this will help with our grant application. Does anybody have any questions about the design at this point? Anything?
Like this wall mural, I'm just seeing them.
So, you know, we've had a pretty successful go with murals.
Right.
And so we would probably work with the Community Appearance Commission to ascertain an appropriate theme for the mural. Go through a process of determining an artist and come up with something that is reflective of our community expectations and values that would be included here. Right now, it's completely just the lines on paper. Okay.
Access to power. I know one of the overlays I saw very early on, Adam, but I haven't seen it in a while. There's still going to be a plenty of access to power,
Right.
you know, whenever needed.
Absolutely.
Kind of
That is one of the things that we described to our designers, is that, especially based on our experience with Winterfest, we know that there's going to be a lot of need for power, and so that will be included in the plan. And so we'll have a robust electrical plan once the construction drawings are made.
Let me ask you another question.
All right.
We talked about this sign out front with a digital sign, I should say. Is that still in the works as far as?
Yes.
Can speak to that.
Excuse me.
The sign is not part of facilities. So,
Okay.
But yes, still in the thinking, something we're working on through our annual budget for next year to program in, actually across a variety of facilities in town. But it's not that would not be within the area shown on this part of facilities. It would be in the other phases of the park.
It's not an eligible element of the part of project. We have had some staff discussions about there being some sort of design cohesion with the wayfinding signage that we're anticipating from the county. And so I think we'll be able to proceed based on the adoption of the budget with a sign at the location to be determined.
Okay.
But we wanted it to have some of that motif, the town logo and that sort of thing.
I got you. I just want to make sure it's not forgotten.
Yes, absolutely. There is a project cost budget in your package. I mentioned the project cost of $1,725,000. We're asking for $500,000 from PARTIF, and the local match of being $1,225,000. That being the $900,000 from the Rural Transformation Fund, $100,000 private donation, and then $225,000 from the town's budget. And that's actually shown on the next page, which says sources of the applicant's matching funds. There's at the top, there's sort of a example, the town of Parkland. We're not the town of Parkland, we're the town of Spencer. And so our budget is the lower matrix that you see there. The next element is something that came to us with high recommendations from, or with a high recommendation from the part of staff for us to do. And that is the Recreation Capital Improvement Plan. This is a an element that had we had this in place last year, we would have gotten about, I think, 3 points is what was assigned to that. So we missed that opportunity. This is not something that is foreign to this board. You have in the past year adopted a capital improvement plan for stormwater, and so this is a similar kind of effort. And I'll sort of turn it over to Peter if he would like to say a little more about that.
Sure. Yeah. And of course, this is a basic plan, but it's a plan that would qualify us for the points on the application, and it simply projects out over the next 5 years or so the various projects. It doesn't get into the detail of specific funding sources about how much for each amount, but it generally lays out each project and over time how they would proceed and our anticipated combination of funding sources for each.
So I do have a question on that. Are we going to, if it's up to 3 points, because of the simplicity of this, are we going to get the full amount, or do we need to expand upon it? Because I know one of the other things with capital improvement plans we see a lot is individual projects have narrative, basically a project sheet on each that explains the project and the need.
Our experience with the, and of course it's a different group, but our experience with the state grant we applied for with the stormwater program, this is the format that was submitted for that one.
Okay.
And so, and we seemed to be successful in that one. So that was the logic by using that same format for this.
And sort of saying the same thing, John provided us with an example of a successfully awarded project that had a CIP that had this level of detail.
Okay.
Do we know if the same people we judging who looked at our last one?
I do not know. I know that they have a pool of reviewers, if you will, and how they are assigned, I don't know. I think that I will probably attend the meeting this year. I don't think they even let you speak, though, really.
No, they didn't let anybody speak.
Did
But
you go to the meeting?
I
We watched
attended
it.
online, yeah.
And what
Yeah.
we noticed was folks on the selection committee kind of advocated for certain projects.
Yeah, they liked anything that had to do with water, and they liked things that had to do with fishing, and they liked things to do with different things of recreation. And I haven't just checking off the list of the things that they.
So I think the question is, if we know certain people involved in the process,
Right.
being able to talk with them ahead of time to make sure that they're primed with the information that they might need.
If that's a possibility,
I imagine the judging is happening, the scoring is happening by members of the authority, right? Or is it a separate?
By the staff. I think they go through the applications and assign points.
But the group assembled that day to vote.
Right.
That is the authority, right? The Parks and Recreation Authority.
The trustees, yeah.
So I think the membership of that group ought to be known in advance. It shouldn't be a surprise, and hopefully we can make some connections.
Yeah, they went through it kind of line by line, I think, and talked about how this one was better than that one.
It was very evident that some prep work had been done with a few of those members based on their intimate knowledge of the projects.
About that.
I have some observations that I probably wouldn't share in a public setting. That's okay.
You're being recorded now, so be sure.
Forever. Right. So anyway, everything you said is true. It's true. So, in light of all of this, we have 3 resolutions. One is Resolution 23-08, which is a resolution that supports the capital improvement plan. The second is 2309, which adopts the master plan for the town park. And then the third is 2310, which is a resolution that is in support of the application itself. So there are 3 distinct resolutions. I will say, Mayor, that a lot of the language is redundant. So
Yeah.
I don't know that you will feel it will be necessary to read each of them.
Thank you. I wasn't planning to.
Just a suggestion. You want to read them? But there you go. So, yes, ma'am.
Would it carry any weight if we reference that this is the year of the trail? Is this set as identified by the North Carolina General Assembly?
It certainly, I don't know that it would hurt anything. I was looking back at
But without the connection to the EB 5861,
Right.
it's not necessarily as relevant for it being a park as opposed to a trail.
Okay.
There may be an opportunity to speak about future trail connections.
Right. Right.
So in the opening sort of whereas it mentions public trails in all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
Public trails.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the Year of the Trails website earlier today, so I know it's an important thing.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions on the resolutions or the project in general application process?
Have we thought any more at all about designated staff, park and recreation?
Well, I think we're taking that under consideration in the budgeting process, and
Yeah, well, I don't anticipate in the upcoming
Right.
fiscal year we'll have any particular changes, but we are working towards that. And yes, in future years that we're trying to do all the prep work we can to get there. I don't think the timing is such right now, but we're quite ready for that.
We can add that, yeah. And that was one of the other things that they did. The folks who were judges
So
kind of reiterated.
my recollection of the conversation I had with John about this, who met with our regional part of designee, the thing that was the most important, and I asked about that specifically, about how we compared with designated staff and that sort of thing. And the reaction that John gave me was that the capital improvement plan was really more important. That if we had had that in place, we probably would have been.
But is it worth mentioning in our application process that as a town, our strategic plan is committed to developing that?
It's in our master plan.
Okay.
It's in the comp plan, which is submitted as part of this, that we're working toward that. And actually, if you will note, in the capital improvement plan, there's a line item that is sort of in the middle of the matrix that's called the Standback Forest Maintenance Facility.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know that anybody would study it as closely as you have, but sort of the implied idea of that is that in 26-27, we're hoping to have some things in the works that would address those issues. But again, I asked a question specifically about that, and the reaction was that there was no competitive advantage to towns that did not have designated staff. They just wanted to know, well, who's taking care of your parks, and if it's your public works department, that's okay.
And my observation was perhaps the most significant spot where our scoring didn't work out the way we had hoped is in their assessment of our recreational elements within the plan. And we believe that strengthening the plan itself and both the narrative will correct those deficiencies.
Other questions?
I'm a little reluctant to say this, but I'm going to go ahead. They missed the fact that we had a comprehensive score.
Yeah.
And that cost us.
So how do we ensure that they don't miss that this time?
I think the point has been made. Okay. And I had an opportunity to convey that to the Secretary of Natural and Cultural Resources in person a few weeks ago at the Salt Paper. And he said, okay. Made a note. So I'm not patting myself on the back, but he understood that mistakes happen.
You didn't hit him over the head with it or anything like that.
I'm sorry?
You didn't hit him over the head with it.
No, I didn't have to. I just said, have a slice.
Yeah.
You know. It was a very convivial conversation.
All right. So, board, based on the nature of these three resolutions being so similar, I would recommend, if there is a desire to move forward with approving these, that there be a motion made to approve all three of them at once, 2308, 2309, and 2310.
I make a motion that we approve these three resolutions.
All right, there is a motion by Mr. Miller. There's a second by Mr. Morgan. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is approved. 4 votes to 0. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Quite
you.
welcome.
Sharpen your pencil.
All right. The next item on our agenda is for some additional vehicles for police and fire. Mr. Softly.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I talk about the actual budget ordinance itself, I think it might be worthwhile to have our police chief talk a little bit about the issues that we're having in trying to procure police vehicles at the moment. So, Chief?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, Chief Brown.
It is the same old dead horse that we have to keep beating about vehicles, but unfortunately we're starting to get a little more information I think will be beneficial to present to you and kind of let you know why we are where we are. So we've been battling, obviously, getting vehicles. That's just the current market, unfortunately. So I've spent a significant amount of time talking with the fleet dealers to handle the state contract bidding for law enforcement, fire department, and vehicles such as that. So the current, I guess the current going rate has been about 9 to 12 months from the time you are able to place an order until you actually are able to get the vehicle. As you know, we placed orders back in September for Durangos, which still have not entered production yet. So they are still slated, but they have not entered production. So we have no VIN number for them. We have no information other than, yes, you'll get them at some point, but we don't know when you're going to get them. I did talk to the local Ford representative for that handles the fleet contract. He said that he has vehicles that were ordered last July that still are not in their possession yet. To kind of compound this and just tell you the whole picture of what's going on. So obviously, you will notice on the street, normally it's Ford, Dodge, or Chevy that you see being used. It's always the big three that get used for law enforcement. They're only ones that we can buy law enforcement specific vehicles that have the wiring and have the channels in the floor for the wiring to be ran. So that's why everybody, as a rule of thumb, go with those three. Where we're sitting now is this past year Chevrolet only produced 25,000 Tahoes, and no Chevrolet pickups made it to North Carolina. They were planning on entering into that business. They were not able to produce any that came to North Carolina because those contracts are negotiated on a October 1st basis, not a July 1. So all the places that have contracts that are negotiated statewide July 1 placed the orders, used up all the allocation. No vehicles left when the contract was made available on October 1st in North Carolina. That's why we don't see any of those around here. So that's likely what we anticipate to see this coming budget year. Will be the same thing with Chevrolet. There may be a chance, but not real high probability. Plus, I will tell you, we're trying to avoid bringing a third vehicle brand in as far as the maintenance. For Joel's guys to maintain the vehicles, we're trying to stay with Dodge or Ford since that's what town-wide we are currently running. To make this a little bit worse, everybody knows, or I guess you've seen, the push is to eliminate the Hemi engines for emissions control reasons. That's just a big push. Everybody else has already transitioned to these turbo V6 engines. That is what Dodge and Stellantis, the owner of them, that's what their intent is. So what I was told by the fleet dealer is they don't know if they're going to offer any Durangos this coming year. I will tell you that the Chargers are slated to end at the end of 23. They do not know what's going to happen with Durangos or anything in law enforcement vehicles because they don't know if they're going to have engines to put in them. The replacement engine that is going to go in there eventually is being used in the Jeep Grand Wagoneer right now. This is the first time that engine has been used stateside. It's been used overseas before, but it's the first time we've used it here. So that leaves us in an even worse position because if by chance Dodge does not open orders, then all the Dodge people are going to have to transition to Ford or some other vehicle for the coming year, which is going to really put us in a bad shot as far as being able to order vehicles and keep the fleet up. So I've been beating my dealers and just calling them weekly, asking if anybody cancels. So we looked up, came across an agency that had placed an order. The order recently came in. The agency did not take the vehicles. So that is what brought us to where we are now. We have a chance to buy off of the ones that were ordered last year that this agency did not take. So it is a very unique situation that we're in. Fortunate that we're in it, I think, but very unique that we're in it. This will prevent us from being in that situation next year of not knowing if we're going to be able to get vehicles or not. So it's kind of our one shot. I spoke with Peter and John, in depth over this as far as what doors are open for us right now and how that will hopefully help the budget next year and then hopefully help us by actually giving our guys vehicles. Obviously with the potential of bringing the 2 new positions on, if that is approved for this coming year in the budget, then we're going to have those vehicles too. So this is going to help put a stopgap in there to take care of that problem. We're in a very unique position that we're getting ready to be full staff for the first time in probably 10 or 12 years. So we are getting ready to roll Crown Vics back in the service that have been sitting on the back line because we actually have officers that need to drive them, and that is still vehicles that are currently in our daily fleet. They're not spares. We have to have Crown Vics that are actually in our normal fleet. So you see some of the beat up Crown Vics back here that are spares that we'll just leave it at they're beat up Crown Vics that are spares. But they are there. But we obviously would like to be able to go ahead and make a move and try to beat beat these dealers at their unfortunate game that we have right now. If you have any questions, I'll definitely be glad to try to answer them for you.
So the agencies that didn't take these, are they police?
They were actually special ordered for them. I mean, I don't know the full deals because I didn't call the agency. I just talked to the fleet dealer. But it was a large agency, and they had ordered a lot of them. I believe they had the same problem. I hate to say what I think they did. I think they ordered from 2 vendors on purpose because they were worried that they were going to have them canceled. So if you know, I think I mentioned in a meeting before, I believe it was Greensboro, somewhere north of us here, a big agency had ordered a bunch and had about 40 or 50 vehicles canceled. So whenever these came in, the agency that had ordered them said, well, we've got ones now, we don't need them. So obviously the dealers don't really complain about that because there's always somebody else that needs them. So I just happened to call at the right time. I actually talked to the guy the day after he found out they were available. So I hit him up right away and said, give me a little bit still we can work on. And that's what brought us to today.
Thank you.
So currently we got 2 Durangos in order, which we're going to leave on order. And looking to next year's budget, we're still going to put another, at least 1 police vehicle in the budget to go ahead and look ordering because we know we're going to have an issue. However, now that some vehicles have been identified that we can get here, especially in light of if the budget's adopted and we have 2 new positions, we've got to have vehicles for them to actually have. So what I have in front of you is a budget ordinance. Now, as you're aware, this last year we got ARPA funding and we supplanted using offsetting salaries and supplanted expenses and one-time expenses. 2 of those were for the fire station extension and the 17th Street stormwater designs. What we ended up spending on those 2 projects was significantly less than what was anticipated. So what staff would like to be able to do is to reallocate some of those funds towards the purchase of these 4 vehicles, together with 25,000 from contingency that the board approved in the budget this year, about 3,000 from lien payments. As I mentioned once before, we had gotten way more money in lien payments this year than we had budgeted, and then transfer $3,203 from a training line item we don't anticipate using this year. By doing that, it will provide the funding to purchase 3 new police vehicles and 1 fire F-150 for the fire department, and provide for all their upfit. So, again, these are one-time funds being used essentially for one-time purposes. So, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the budget ordinance itself.
Thank you, Mr. Soflin. Questions from the board?
If we move these supplemented funds, is that going to affect us going forward with plans for next year?
Yes and no. We're not using all the monies that are being saved, so those will be reprogrammed for some other purposes. Again, one-time purposes, and those will be included in next year's budget. They will be being a part of the appropriated from fund balance because we've already received them. So you'll see a larger appropriation from fund balance probably next year than typical. But again, there's going to be a substantial sum, maybe 80, 90,000, that's going to be carried over from one year to the next.
Other questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board. So we will consider a motion for budget ordinance 23-12.
I make a motion that we accept the budget ordinance 23-12.
There's a motion by Mr. Miller.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Morgan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Right, all opposed? And that is approved 4-0. All right. Mr. Francis, anything else?
Well, yes. So you got to hear from Chief File about the vehicles from the police department, and I think you understand the need there. And you've heard previously from Chief Lanning about at our planning session about the need for that vehicle. He is here as well, and if there's any questions about that vehicle, he's available. I don't know if there's anything in particular left that you need to share at this point, but
Thought you were going to get out easy, didn't you?
What we're hoping is that you take a second action to authorize me to enter into the purchase. But
yeah, thankfully Chief File covered about everything I was going to say. In our planning session, I'd said we did have a 2006 Crown Vic that we received used from Kannapolis Fire Department. They received used from Kannapolis Police Department. And obviously we made some transitions this year. The deputy chief went from a stipend position to a 19-hour-a-week part-time position. Obviously with the expectation, large incident, if I'm on vacation, so on and so forth, he can respond in my absence to be able to fill those roles. So really the basis for us is to replace that Crown Vic, get him to something that's dependable out of, kind of like Chief File said, it is a 2006 and maybe a little bit better than what PD has, but it's kind of on its last leg. It's time to send it somewhere else. Obviously ours, if you pay attention in the pricing, was a little bit more than what Chief File was able to acquire. We did find one in Salisbury that was a little bit cheaper. Went and looked at it, and what we need is a 40-20-40 bucket seat in the front, so we can remove the center, drop our center console in. Naturally, the one that was cheaper did not have that. It had its own center console that we wouldn't be able to remove. So that was just the reasoning why ours was a little more than his. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer as well.
Right. I do.
Yes.
The new vehicle you'll be personally driving, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How many miles does your current vehicle have?
34,000.
Is there a rotation period? I know there is a rotation period for the police. but
Historically, absolutely not.
they're not.
Ideally, obviously, is kind of enter something like what the PD uses, to where we're not getting these vehicles that are older. I know our the other Ford, it's a 13, which granted it won't get out of its own way, but it's there. So that would be something that obviously we could work with Peter and John to kind of develop in the future to a vehicle replacement plan for us as well.
I think I would like to see us have our entire fleet on public works as well. Everything
Public
on a
works,
rotating
Yeah.
schedule.
I think that's the way we need to go. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, the manager has requested action on approving authorization for him to execute these contracts for the purchase of these vehicles. Is there a motion to do so?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Morgan,
Second.
second by Mr. Miller. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is also approved 4-0. All right. Anything else?
No, we certainly appreciate your time and supporting this, and thank you.
Very good.
I have a couple of things I want to say.
Can we do that in
The
a special session?
Well, what do you mean? Yeah, I don't know that we can because they're not specifically listed. Do they relate to the things we just?
yes.
Okay.
All right. Perfect.
As you all well know, these are troubling times. We've just gone through a countywide reevaluation, and there are a lot of people, especially in our own community, that are struggling right now. I would hope that all the departments that are receiving new vehicles and that currently own vehicles, that we follow proper maintenance plans and we do everything that we possibly can in terms of washing and waxing and maintaining the vehicles that we do have to make them last. One of the things that was brought up in our other meeting when we purchased the garbage truck, I think Patty or Pat made asked, well, how long do garbage trucks usually last? And I made the comment, it depends on how much furniture you cram into it. I know that was an off-the-cuff comment, but we were using a 5-year-old garbage truck to pick up furniture and compact it, and that's what led to the problems with the vehicle. I would hope that all of our staff, regardless of what they do, if they're involved in driving or maintaining these vehicles, that they are cognizant of the fact that, again, we're a small town, and I hope that we don't have to hang everybody out to dry tax-wise in order to pay for the things that we have purchased. I drive a 59-year-old vehicle that's got 598,000 miles on it, and it's still as good as the day it came off the assembly line. I know that police and fire vehicles, as well as town garage vehicles and trucks and everything, they go through a lot. But I would hope that whenever they are used, that they're used wisely and maintained wisely, so that we can hang on to them and keep them in service as long as possible. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. All right. We've reached the end of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
All right. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right. All opposed? All right. We stand adjourned. Thank you all.